Welcome everyone to another episode of our knowledge-based podcast series. This time we have with us Ishmohit Arora. Ishmohit per se does not need an introduction. He's the founder of SOIC. Usually it is Ishmohit who hosts Investor. This time he is on the other side of the table and we'll try to understand his own investing journey and how he invests. So welcome Ishmohit.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Ankush. Yeah, so I think this is one of my second or third podcasts only, which on which I've been invited as a guest, right?
Right. Right. So guys, before we begin, a quick disclaimer and disclosure. So Search Capital is a trade name, brand name used by me, Ankush Agrawal. I'm a SEBI registered individual research analyst. Nothing that we discuss in this podcast today should be considered as a recommendation. Ishmohit, if you can put out your disclosure and disclaimers, please.
Yeah, so SOIC Intelligent Research is also a corporate RA, and nothing in this presentation should be considered as a buy or sell recommendation. Pure purpose is to have a knowledge-based conversation.
Great. Great. So, Ishmohit, let's start with your beginnings in the market, like how you started in the market. What was your initial experience like up till and unless till you started SOIC? Like beyond SOIC, I think there's a different journey altogether. But how you started and your journey till the point you began SOIC back in 2022. 20 you started, right? 2020.
2020 COVID.
Yeah, yeah. So till that time, like how you started, how were things before?
So I think basically, so my first brush with stock markets was way back in 2008. I think I was a child back then. I was in the
Right.
seventh class में होंगे शायद से तब.
Hmm.
And what happened during that period? नहीं, sixth class में होगा. So like a lot of my family members, actually I live in a joint family, so there are
Hmm.
close to 25 people in my house,
Wow.
and it's an interesting fact that almost half of the family member would have been in the stock markets at that point of time, because किसी को लैंको लेना था, किसी को सुजलॉन लेना था, किसी को पुंज लॉयड
Right.
लेना था. Right, so those things used to happen. So my mom, she also used to do a lot of stock market, but based on tips by the broker. And back then I think mobile internet wasn't that prevalent. And what used to
Hmm.
happen ki I used to come back from school around 3 p.m. and she used to make lunch for us. And when she used to go to make lunch for us, तो बोलती थी कि टीवी पे ये वाला स्टॉक का जब प्राइस आएगा तो जस्ट राइट इट डाउन कि इसका प्राइस
Right.
चल रहा है, राइट. सो
Right. Right.
आई यूज्ड टू डू दैट वेरी basically diligently for at least 2-3 months. And I still have memories from back then कि family lost a lot of money. Some of the companies were delisted. Like तो अभी 2021 में वो वाला पोर्टफोलियो पूरा साफ करा था. And luckily there was only a Reliance Industries over there which has done very well. But apart from that, there was a Suzlon over there. But Suzlon ठीक है, अभी थोड़ा सा रिकवरी हुआ, बट वहां से तो बहुत डाउन था because there was a lot of dilution.
Right.
And a lot of stocks went bankrupt. Now the companies don't exist today. Lanco is one of them. I think HDL or HDIL करके एक business, I'm forgetting, infra business. That stock
Mm-hmm.
450 on which my family bought, but today it's at 6 or 7 rupees. Right, so that type of losses the family took. And post 2008, I think family has never done stock market basically that diligently. तो मेरे को तब से थोड़ा एक ये था कि यार ये बैक ऑफ द माइंड की स्टॉक्स, मतलब ये क्या है, ये मतलब पूरे दिन टिकर चलते रहते हैं, क्या चीज है.
Right.
Because see, I've done under like even in 11th 12th I've done arts, for example. Like I'm not
Okay.
a typical finance background, but 11th 12th में as my optional subject I took economics.
Hmm.
So economics used to fascinate me कि यार ये macro economics या micro economics क्या, because I belong to a business family. So day in and day out, because see my father used to come back home early from the office, but he used to be constantly be on the phone कि मतलब इसको इतना माल भेज रहा है, इसको इतना goods भेजना है.
Right. Right.
So it used to be very fascinating to see कि how the trade of entire finance or money works, right? So 11th में I think I just got to know कि money creation process क्या होता है, right? कैसे economy में creation of credit होता है. So those things were very interesting. And then even in 11th 12th, the economics teacher that we had in school, he used to trade a lot.
Okay.
During the classes, right? He used to be sitting on his laptop, or he had his phone on, and he used to be looking at candlesticks. तो
Wow.
कहते हैं ना, हाइंडसाइट में क्लियर होता है कि वो
Yeah.
कर रहा
Yeah.
था. तब पता ही नहीं था क्या कर रहे हो.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that teacher became really good friends with me. I'm still in touch with him. So he says he watches our videos as well, right?
Right.
And so we used to go to his house as well to study separately from the school. तो those classes we also took, but वहां से स्टॉक मार्केट का और इंट्रोडक्शन स्टार्ट हुआ कि सर स्टॉक मार्केट होता क्या है, बताओ तो सही, हम लोग तो आर्ट्स बैकग्राउंड से, एंड एक्चुअली जो कॉमर्स
Right.
वाले को भी नहीं पता था, साथ मेरे 2-3 कॉमर्स वाले स्टूडेंट्स आते थे, सो देयर ही स्टार्ट एक्सप्लेनिंग कि हाउ द स्टॉक मार्केट वर्क्स एंड ये सब क्या है, बट आई थिंक हिज आइडिया ऑफ स्टॉक मार्केट वाज मोर इनटू ट्रेडिंग, बट
Yeah.
वहां से फैसिनेशन आया. And post 12th class, there is always a period of time that you have before your university starts where you're completely free and
Right.
completely
Yeah.
idle. So in that time period, I like attended a couple of seminars on stock market just to brushen up my understanding, right? And
Okay.
the interesting thing is, the two of my friends who made me attend that seminar, they themselves didn't pursue the course, right? So I
Okay.
did like 3-4 courses on basically stock market back then. And Udemy maybe I used to keep searching कि कुछ stock markets पे हो. But then in one of the seminars, I interacted with a fellow value investor, and he introduced Peter Lynch, Warren Buffett, Phil Fisher, all these guys, and he said कि start by reading One Upon Wall Street, Intelligent Investor. So I think 2014 की ये बात होगी. So I got very deep into it, and undergrad में I was still doing political science में I was doing BA honors, and even in that optional subject I took economics for the next 3 years, क्योंकि by our time वो 4 years से 3 years हो गया था. And college में I just used to go to play football and just used to go to
Mm.
the library, because attendance का तो कोई concept ही नहीं था कॉलेज में, मतलब
Mm.
professors खुद ही नहीं आए होते थे DU में. So that
Right.
lot of idle time, and that
Right.
is where the learning, reading, and searching on internet, all these things sort of rapidly multiplied. I came across Professor Bakshi back then, right? YouTube पे कुछ भी मिलता था कंटेंट तो देख लेता था. वर्कशॉप्स बेसिकली जाता था. अटेंडेड अ कपल ऑफ वर्कशॉप्स इन बैंगलोर एज वेल ऑन फोरेंसिक एनालिसिस. दिल्ली के अंदर भी बेसिकली अटेंड करी. सो दैट इज हाउ द इंटरेस्ट स्टार्टेड मल्टीप्लाइंग मल्टीफोल्ड. तो
Right.
since I was a student in political science, so
Yeah.
a lot of my peers, they wanted to become a civil servant, or
Mm.
other people wanted to get into politics, right?
Right.
College ka jo politics hota hai, youth politics.
Right. Right.
So I got very disheartened because I just thought कि generally people are not very driven, right? मतलब सबका mindset है कि job ले लो और ठीक है हो जाएगा,
Mm.
right? So I didn't want to participate in that particular race. मतलब some people have done that well also. So I think I decided that I'll do something in finance only, because for 2-3 years I was just giving almost 60% of my day to finance and stock markets. Right. Well,
Right.
learned accounting myself. I learned the entire language of stock market myself. वो courses से तो help हुई. Back then I did so because I was reading stuff from Benjamin Graham. The first couple of stocks which I bought was Coal India type businesses, ONGC type
Okay.
businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So stocks did fall, right? So they did
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
I think for first 2 years of my journey, I think maybe Ajanta Pharma was there, which did well. But for first 2 years of my journey, a lot of stocks were into losses because I was basically reading that type of stuff and buying
Yeah. Yeah.
stocks,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that is how the journey started. And then finally, when the college was ending in 2017, so I was just searching on Twitter. So a friend of mine suggested, I was attending that CFA society meet कि Twitter पे join कर ले, a lot of smart investors are there. So I was like,
Right.
ठीक है, why not, let's try. Right, so Twitter पे I came across this basically there was a job offer from Perfect Research Family Office,
Okay. Masha.
and I applied for that. I went to their office in Green Park, and so they had this MCQ examination which you had to solve, and those questions were accounting.
Okay.
और क्योंकि 3 साल अकाउंटिंग ही पढ़ा था, तो अकाउंटिंग बहुत अच्छे से
Right. Right.
I solved all those questions. Like I was like, ये तो it's like a walk in the park, right?
Hmm.
So then and value investing भी बहुत पढ़ लिया था. फिल फिशर पूरा याद था, पीटर लिंच पूरा याद था. तो मतलब जो
Right.
इन्वेस्टिंग की लिटरेचर है वो बहुत अच्छे से पता थी, राइट? अभी जो
Right.
बिजनेस एनालिसिस पार्ट है वो इतना स्ट्रांग नहीं था, बट इन्वेस्टिंग की जो लिटरेचर है वो पूरी पता थी उस टाइम पे. सो
Right.
सो सर से जब डिस्कशन हुआ तो आई थिंक होपफुली सर वाज हैड अ गुड इम्प्रेशन. And then, sir, I think within a day, I got a call that they're that they've agreed to my application, and I started working over there. And that is where I learned business analysis well. So, जैसे I think we did a presentation on InfoEdge back then, and we had a thesis on Zomato and Policy Bazaar being demerged over 4-5 years back then,
Yeah.
right?
It was a 100-page PPT or something like that.
Originally, it was like 250 pages plus.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard about it. It was like very long something.
Right. So I and like a fellow analyst friend basically made that presentation. So, but sir was like Ashish sir was the real inspiration back then because he drove the process कि नहीं 2007-8 से एनुअल रिपोर्ट पढ़नी स्टार्ट करो, इसकी सारी कॉन कॉल्स पढ़ो, इसके सारे इंटरव्यूज देखो जो पिछले 5 साल में हुए हैं, इसके पॉलिसी बाजार में क्या हो रहा है, एंड जो जोमेटो इसके अंदर क्या हो रहा है ये देखो, नौकरी.com के इंटरनेशनल पीयर्स ढूंढो. So that type of
Right.
work we had to put in, and I was like, this is real business analysis. Matlab, this is how long it might take. But over a period of time, I think we have cut short like a lot of things which like are relevant, some things which are not relevant. But that is how we got introduced to this entire thing. कि research करनी है तो ऐसे करनी है. So
Right.
that is where I think we basically were very focused. So I think 2019 तक I worked there. In 2019 में I left work, and yeah, so 2020 COVID struck, and that is where I was looking at YouTube, and I was looking at a lot of content was there, and I was
Right.
like, actual fundamental analysis तो है ही नहीं.
Right. Right.
मतलब चैनल्स कैसे हैं, कोई डांस कर रहा है, कोई सेंसेशनल कंटेंट बना रहा है, मतलब एक्चुअली में देयर इज नो वन डूइंग फंडामेंटल एनालिसिस.
Right.
Is
Right.
where I just made a like a random video on Suven Pharma
Right.
Studios because it just demerged and it was at 13p. So that
Yeah.
video did well, and that video gave the motivation to keep basically putting more business analysis out. So me, my friend, and Sarthak. So the three of us are co-founders at SOIC.
Yeah.
Siddhant, Sarthak, and I. So Siddhant was good into graphics. He also does investing. Sarthak is very good into IT work, website work हो या पीछे IT
Right.
infra. He's really good at it, and I was there. So currently just office में बैठा हूँ. This was our first office only. So this is the basement of my house, right?
Okay.
And here we started recording videos, and I learned editing very quickly, right? So there's this software by the name of Movavi करके software है. So I
Okay.
never knew editing. So I used to shoot videos, edit videos, and I used to be awake till 6 a.m., 7 a.m. Right? ऐसा होता था. So I used to
Right.
sleep in the morning. तो research करा morning से लेके फिर 6, 7 a.m. तक करा. After doing this for 4 months, I was completely burnt out.
Yeah.
Then we started hiring a team, right? कि freelance ये कर सकते हैं, and then we never had a concept कि we'll make a course or market it or something, but a lot of people requested कि how can we,
Right.
right? So our
Right.
first course, I remember it was on a Google sheet, unlisted links on YouTube. So people was
Okay.
it was basically spreading like wildfire everywhere. मतलब we used to sell the course for 4,000, people were आगे selling the course at 299 rupees, right? That type of stuff was happening, right?
Right. So, Ishmohit, when you left Perfect Research 2019, so by that time, what was the thought in your mind? Like, did you figured out that, I have figured out how to invest and I'll do it full time, or you wanted to do something more?
So basically, I think we have this side business which still runs today. So back then, I had set up a football ground, which is an
Okay.
artificial
Okay,
turf.
you had the turf, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that we have still four artificial turf facilities running in Delhi, and
Okay.
they've been still doing well. Like so, मतलब मैं उतना जाता नहीं उसमें because there is another partner. So I am just like one meeting a month we have. That's it, and he's also a
Right.
very good friend. So he's the one who's driving that business. But ideation was sort of mine way back in 2018, 19. So it was a collaborative effort. So that business we started because see, मेजर थिंग क्या है कि यार इन्वेस्टिंग तो आप कर रहे हो पर आपका कैश फ्लो तो होना चाहिए.
Right.
तो
Right.
आप मतलब आप 60% का भी XIRR कमा लो, 70% का भी
Right.
XIRR कमा लो, बट इफ योर a pond of capital is really small, how will it matter, right?
Right. Right. So the idea was to have this side business, use that cash flow and invest for yourself. Was the
Correct,
whole
correct.
idea.
That
Okay.
was the whole idea. And
Got
मतलब because see I belong to a business family,
it.
तो
Right.
शुरू से back of the mind गया था I have to do a business in life.
Right. 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 So Ishmohit, let's talk about investing. So if someone was to come and just ask you, how does Ishmohit invest? Like, how would you explain it? Like, what are some of the key aspects of how you invest now?
I think I'll just say कि over a period of time I've become very मतलब used to doing inflection investing.
Okay.
Inflection in the sense कि a lot of times the stocks that we'll be looking at might have bad historical financials, but now
Right.
there'll be some turnaround happening in the business, or there might be a J curve in profitability which might also happen. or there'll be some new order that comes the company's way, right? So maybe it's because of the market cycle also that I've been spoiled, but it's purely inflection investing. I can give an example for it, right?
Yeah.
There is this business by the name of Glenmark Pharmaceuticals,
Right.
and they sold one of their subsidiaries, Glenmark Life Sciences, and the company had a lot of debt, Glenmark Pharma, and there was also like the problem they were not focused on their formulation business. And actually, may their domestic formulation business was is still top three fastest growing brands in the country, even at this moment of time. So there was a very clear idea that if this business is sold first, they'll pay off the debt, right? Secondly,
Right.
what they were doing was they were focusing on the domestic formulation business, so margins will start expanding. So these two ideas were very clear. And thirdly, what was happening? Ki this company actually domestic brand तो was strong है Glenmark का, but बड़ा problem क्या था कि they used to take those cash flows and start doing R&D for basically innovative
Yeah.
molecules.
Yeah.
So that is like human life sciences type.
Yeah.
Now they have almost four commercial molecules. One of them is Rialtris, which they expect it will cross $100 million of sale. तो इक्नियोस करके जो उनका सब्सिडरी है उसमें R&D का एक्सपेंडिचर भी अब घट गया है, and a lot of those molecules have been commercialized and there the margins are really high. So that was also a trigger कि R&D cost will go down from here.
Right.
And the valuation of the stocks, we were looking at it ki I thought ki on a normalized basis this company will do 1600 to 1800 crores of PAT, matlab 1 or 1.5 year out, and market cap I think back then used to be 22,000 crore. So I was just doing a peer-to-peer analysis ki if I look at any big pharma or like a basically diversified company, minimum it trades at 25-30 times earnings, whether it's an Ajanta
Right.
Pharma, whether or it's like Sun Pharma. Sun Pharma is like a different beast altogether, or whether it's a Dr. Reddy's. तो बहुत ballpark valuation करा था उसका, and now the company is still on an like margin expansion trajectory. Now they're saying कि they'll do 20% EBITDA margin almost this year. They've done 18% in H1, so probably H2 में margins should be much higher. Sorry, 19%. So H2 में should be 20% types. And so that is again there was an inflection point which we could catch, that the company selling one of its operating business was the way we screened the stock. Ki why will someone
Right.
sell their operating business?
Right. Right. So, Ishmael, obviously, now you want to invest purely based on this inflections or catalyst, but this would have obviously developed over time, wherein initially you would have found some success in these kind of opportunities that made you realize, this is the approach that works for me. So, what was that one key moment that made you realize, okay, this is the framework? Like, this is what Grandmark obviously is a recent example of yours, but like in past last 2-3 years there would be a couple of stocks that would have made you realize, okay, that this is the kind of setup that I want. Like what were those stocks then?
I think just as an example, so 2018-19 cycle say it was Alkyl Amines, Gujarat Ambuja Exports, and APL Apollo. So Alkyl
Okay.
Amines, I think used to do 600 crores of revenue in 2018, and they were doing a 250 crore capex, so they were doubling their gross block. And it's a business which is a proxy to pharma industry. So it
Right.
grows when the pharma is doing well, it does bad when the pharma is not doing well. And also some competition from China right now. But back then, also part of the business, basically the chemicals that they make, methylamines, are corrosive. So they can't be exported. Right. So it's a
Right.
very localized industry in nature. तो इतना तो दिख रहा था कि इस बिजनेस में डबल डिजिट वॉल्यूम ग्रोथ बहुत लॉन्ग टर्म आ सकती है. And because they were doing capex and it was a huge one, and they were taking some debt as well, because this company was very debt averse, but because the promoter was taking debt, so that was one of the signals that something interesting could happen. And business used to be at 13p.
Right. Different times.
In
2018.
13p for 19 to 20% margins for the last entire decade.
Right.
राइट. तो मतलब स्टेबल मार्जिन से 13p पे बिजनेस था, 15-20% ROE बिजनेस था. तो दैट इज वन ऑफ द पॉइंटर्स कि आई इन्वेस्टेड व्हेन द केपेक्स वेंट लाइव, एंड आई नेवर न्यू कि दिस मार्जिन 19-20% का विल गो टू 42% इन अ क्वार्टर. Even the promoter
Yes.
didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because there was COVID shortage and stuff. So that margin actually went to 42% in one of the quarters. And then a lot of storification started happening on the stock and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Promoter was saying he margins will normalize. And promoter in last 3 decades of his this business history had never sold even 1 rupee of share. Right? He never did insider selling. But at that point of time, he started selling his stock a lot. I think he sold almost 2-3% in the open market. राइट. सो दैट वाज अ पॉइंटर कि रिस्क बहुत बढ़ गया है बिकॉज पीक मार्जिन के ऊपर बैठा हुआ है. But that inflection of capex going live and demand coming up, that was a very big trigger. Similar thing happened in Deepak Nitrite because they did like a
Yeah.
huge capex in phenol. And
Yeah.
honestly, मतलब कंपनी का फिनॉल का केपेक्स तो लाइव हो गया था, बट द फिनॉल की प्राइसिंग आई थिंक 65-70 रुपीज पर किलो थी. एंड द मोमेंट प्राइसिंग वेंट टू 110 to 120, द कंपनी प्रिंटेड मनी लाइक एनीथिंग. आई थिंक 10x हो गया था प्रॉफिट एक साल में. Right, so that
Yeah.
was another one. All these stocks used to come up in relative strength screens, right? So अगर 2018 से भी 20 में आप देखो तो chemicals and large banks or your this theme of consistent compounders, these were the only stocks or only factors which
Yeah.
were doing well as such, right?
Yeah.
And APL Apollo, I still remember कि we owned the stock for 18 months, nothing happened. Stock used to go up, used to come down, used to go up, used to come down, was a stagnant line. But the moment they switched to cash and carry model, उन्होंने working capital zero कर दिया business में. Right? कि trade
Right.
receivables में, the day you are purchasing goods is the day you have to sort of basically pay the company. So that was a very big trigger कि working capital cycle initially like well basically they completely basically finished it. So that was the key fundamental catalyst. And I still remember that con call. I think वो quarter 3 था FY20 का या quarter 4 था FY20 का. So that is where there was a big trigger or big
Q3, that negative working capital one, right?
करेक्ट करेक्ट करेक्ट.
Yeah. Yeah.
वो एक बहुत बड़ा अर्निंग ट्रिगर था उसके अंदर. अर्निंग ट्रिगर से ज्यादा क्या था कि यार ये बिजनेस तो फ्री कैश फ्लो
Yeah.
फेंकेगा. नहीं तो आरओसी एक्सपैंड हो जाएगी, फ्री कैश फ्लो फेंकेगा तो a lot of investors who generally don't invest in companies who are not making free
Yeah.
cash will start coming over here. Right? So that
Right.
was the triggers over there. So that is how
Right.
I've been getting used to this thing of inflection investing. I think जैसे अभी recently जो कंपनीज विच मैन्युफैक्चर दैट कवच सिस्टम और टी कैश सिस्टम, तो वहां पे भी एक
Right.
इन्फ्लेक्शन है कि यार ऑर्डर ही अब मिला है. राइट, मतलब
Right.
लोग का ऑर्डर मिला और ट्रैक्स का भी जस्ट ऑर्डर मिल रहा है. एंड दैट्स अ
Yeah.
वेरी बिग इन्फ्लेक्शन पॉइंट. आई थिंक फेब्रुवरी में ट्रैक्स का भी ऑर्डर आ जाएगा. Right, so
Right.
those companies or that particular factor might do well for next 2-3 years because margins could be
Right.
like early to 20% EBITDA or 20% types. So a lot of businesses will double or triple their top line because of that. So that is again an
Right.
inflection point. So searching for inflection point, I think fundamental catalyst ढूंढना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है. That is
Right.
and sometimes होता भी नहीं है तो patiently बैठना पड़ता है, कुछ नहीं मिल रहा अभी तो.
Right. So would it be suffice to say, Ishmohit, that now purely your portfolio would be of this inflection investing? Like, don't you do anything else now?
So demergers होंगे कुछ कंपनीज के. कुछ
Right.
कंपनीज होंगी जहाँ पे इन्फ्लेक्शन तो एज सच नहीं, बट वेयर द मार्जिन्स आर जनरली एक्सपैंडिंग ओवर 2-3 years. So next 2-3 years
Right.
also the margin trajectory will be very clear. And generally because we're looking for companies growing faster than a nominal GDP growth rate, so something or the other trend will be happening over there. या तो कोई
Right.
डिफेंस का ट्रेंड हो रहेगा उधर, या तो कोई ऐसे कवच सिस्टम का ट्रेंड हो रहेगा, या तो प्री इंजीनियर बिल्डिंग्स का ट्रेंड हो रहेगा. So something or the
Right.
other might be happening over there, right? So that
Right.
is I think interesting. So all
So,
what is interesting is that sometimes these good businesses or epic companies go through soft patches.
right.
तो अब वो सॉफ्ट पैच देखो, प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है, अगर पहला क्वार्टर खराब है ना एक कंपनी का तो वो तो पक्की बात है कि हो सकता है 6-7 क्वार्टर खराब ही आने वाले. राइट,
Right. Right.
बिकॉज
Absolutely.
कंपनी विल डू एवरीथिंग इन इट्स पावर नॉट टू शो अ बैड क्वार्टर.
Mm-hmm.
बट यू नो कि अगर 6-7 क्वार्टर्स खराब हो गए ना, एंड बिकॉज नाउ द बेस हैज बीन कंप्लीटली क्लीनड अप फ्रॉम
Yeah.
लास्ट ईयर, and if the valuations have fallen to such a low level, there if matlab there just by investing over there you are just exposing yourself to luck and optionality ki what if it turns around this quarter, will this business be at 23-24 times earnings FY25? Probably no, right? It might re-rate very quickly. So that type of stocks are also there in the PF, but that is like I think that will be 1/5 of the PF, though that type of category.
Right. Right. So mostly it's like more you can find inflection investing or else good trends, high growth, and this high quality soft patch, right? That would be broadly what you'll invest.
Yeah, and I think inflection may be demergers and these basically just
Yeah, inflection, I think there would be many catalysts, capex, promoter change, or whatever. There's a lot of factors that can work.
industry.
So okay, yeah. Yeah. So the best thing that works for you is inflection investing. What is one thing that doesn't work for you? Like what are the kind of setups that you think that this is not this is something that doesn't work generally and this doesn't work for me or also.
I think two types of mistakes I've done in last 3-4 years. पहला तो बड़ा कॉमन मिस्टेक है कि बाइंग लार्ज कैप फॉर द सेक ऑफ लार्ज कैप,
Mm,
देयर इज नो इन्फ्लेक्शन,
yeah,
राइट?
yeah,
क्या उसमें अब इंफॉर्मेशन एसिमेट्री होगी या क्या एनालिटिकल एसिमेट्री होगी व्हेन 100 एनालिस्ट आर ट्रैकिंग दैट कंपनी, राइट? So that is one of the point that is probably been my most common mistake which I've made. कि मतलब just buying a company for the sake of buying it because again वो बहुत सस्ता हो गया है तो उसमें कुछ ना कुछ तो बढ़िया हो ही जाएगा, right? So that is one of
very
the
true.
mistakes I've made. Second mistake that I've made is that overstaying my welcome in a couple of cyclicals. Right,
Okay.
so if I like just an example, right? So जैसे microfinance का sector, I've been tracking one business since 2017 over there. That business has grown its bottom line probably 14-15 times in last 6-7 years in a cyclical industry, has done a cross cycle ROE of more than 20%, and has the probably the lowest NNP in the industry even today, along with one more like business. But again, there are points to buy them, points to sell them. So probably
Mm,
in one of these businesses, I overstayed my welcome because I wanted to do long-term investing for 3-4 years. Now I have to do long-term
yeah,
investing. I have to sit for the cycle to turn.
yeah.
That is
It's
how
down almost 50%, I think, huh? On the top.
it's down 50%, and 50% से भी ज़्यादा, I think 60% down हो गया अभी तो, right? तो 2020 में भी ऐसा ही हुआ था. I think it fell 60-65%. But interesting thing is कि I think Ankush, I lost your. Am I audible?
I think I lost you there.
Ankush, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah. Now we're better. Now better.
I think वो screen freeze हो गया था.
Yeah, yeah.
So now again, that is a mistake which I've been working to correct. Ki if it's a cyclical, don't overstay or welcome. As simple as that. Exit, be objective with the money, and take your money and invest somewhere else. You can do long term investing. करना है cyclical में तो फिर 5-6 साल बैठो, 2-3 cycles देखो. But be very okay with the state कि it might fall 50-60% from the top, and from the bottom it might be a 3-4 bagger again. So maybe when it hits the bottom with the help of technicals, whenever numbers start improving, that is when you start investing in these companies.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Obviously, I mean, I think in this kind of companies, you have to play it like commodity companies only. Like the worst quarter, worst time, you should buy them and then buy it for the best time, and it works that. On your first point of buying large caps, this is something that even I've made this mistake. Do you think, Ishmohit, this feeling of buying into large caps is coming from the fact that last few years small caps have done incredibly well, right? And there's always this jittery feeling that now there would be a correction in small caps and large caps will do well. So to kind of preemptively prepare for that, a lot of investors are sort of thinking that let me buy a bit of large cap, let me buy a bit of large cap, even though they know the growth is lower, right? Versus what is there in small caps. So do you think that is one of the factors that is playing this role wherein people want to buy large cap because they kind of sort of feeling jittery about what can happen?
I think yeah, I think because the thing is कि something that hasn't worked, तो the value investor in you says कि यार इसको देख लेते हैं तो चला नहीं बहुत टाइम से, so you should look
Hmm.
at this particular sector, particular factor, right? So I think probably that is one of the reasons. But other thing is कि if it hasn't worked, there could be a reason why it hasn't worked, because bulk of the FII selling comes in top 200 names because they are the most liquid names in the market, right?
Right.
And so specifically in the top 50 names of the country, right? So अगर bulk of the selling FI की उधर आ रही है तो fundamentals चाहे कुछ भी करे, but if the flows are against you, what happens then? It becomes a very long waiting game, right? So that is another issue, right? So I've also seen कि one of the mistakes I think in the past that has happened कि I bought one of the businesses. I think PAT went from 60 crores to 280 crores. The stock only doubled, and there was a trajectory. At the end PAT went to 550 crores type. तो मतलब 80 करोड़ से ऑलमोस्ट 550 करोड़ तक का पैट गया. तो पैट like it's almost 6-7 times on
Six,
profit
seven
after
times.
tax.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
stock only gave a 1.5 times return. It was up only by 150% because the flows were against this stock. Couple of FIIs used to keep selling that particular business, right? So that is also sometimes that is beyond fundamentals, right? That is like issue of flows. तो large cap में flow का issue तो definitely चल रहा है, and generally return expectation from large caps has to be a bit lower versus what we have seen in businesses which grow faster than the nominal GDP, because एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं, अगर HUL का एग्जाम्पल ले लो, यहाँ रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज का एग्जाम्पल ले लो, कैन वी एक्सपेक्ट रिलायंस टू शो 25% पैट ग्रोथ? I
No.
don't have an answer to that. HUL volumes grow at low single digits. Can you expect HUL to show 30-40% bad growth ever? मतलब हो सकता है कि कोई क्वार्टर बहुत खराब हो गया हो पिछले साल का, तो एक क्वार्टर में ग्रोथ दिख जाए, राइट? सिमिलरली आई वाज लुकिंग एट नंबर्स ऑफ डाबर इंडिया. I was shocked to look at the numbers कि last 14 quarters से growth top line growth has been between 2 to 5% range. तो आई वाज लुकिंग एट कि यार ये लोग कह रहे कंज्यूमर सेक्टर देख लो, कंजम्पशन सेक्टर बहुत टाइम से चला नहीं है, ये नहीं हुआ. लाइक कुड बी द रीजन बिकॉज दीज कंपनीज आर नाउ ग्रोइंग स्लोअर देन द नॉमिनल GDP. तो
Right.
आपका इन्फ्लेशन रेट का ही ग्रोथ हो गया ना, अगर 2 to 5% का ग्रोथ आ रहा है. बियॉन्ड उसके आपका क्या ग्रोथ है, राइट? तो
Right.
लार्ज कैप में भी टिपिकली आई हैव ऑल्सो ऑब्जर्व दिस कि पीपल बिकम वेरी वैल्यूएशन एग्नोस्टिक इन लार्ज कैप्स व्हिच आर ग्रोइंग फास्ट.
Right.
बिकॉज मनी होर्डिंग होता है ना यार. अब
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
निफ्टी मिड कैप 150 इंडेक्स लगाओ, उसका 46 का पी चल रहा है आज. लाइक लुक एट स्टॉक्स
Yeah.
लाइक टीबी फिनटेक ओवर देयर, लुक एट स्टॉक्स लाइक
Yeah.
पॉलीकैब ओवर देयर. नाउ जोमेटो हैज बेसिकली
Zomato.
टॉप
Yeah.
100 में चला गया. बट यू लुक एट सम ऑफ द वैल्यूएशन डजंट मेक एनी सेंस, राइट? मतलब पॉलीकैब इज गोइंग थ्रू अ साइकिल वेयर अ लॉट ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल ओवर कैपेसिटी इज गोइंग टू कम इनटू प्ले.
Right.
And last year was the best ever year. But we are paying 60-65 times earnings. Siemens का example ले लो, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they belong to that particular factor, Nifty mid cap 150, right? Companies beyond the top 100 businesses where fast growth is coming, money hoarding is happening. Look at multiple of Kalyan. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
any sense,
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that hoarding of money or that hoarding of flows, when it unwinds, it's very painful. But in the
Yeah.
meanwhile, it looks really good. So
Yeah.
that is also a learning. Ki large cap which grows fast, people will ignore valuation. Just money, like blind money hoarding, basically starts in those type of companies.
Right. When I used to work professionally in our firm, we had this saying कि market में सब growth के भूखे हैं. Like at a fund level, everyone wants growth, and since your pool is limited to say top 100, top 200 stocks, there's no other way what you can do. You obviously are not going to go buy a Reliance and HUL. You obviously has to allocate some capital somewhere, right? So, which is what is sort of playing out, wherein the divergence, the more higher you go in terms of say from Nifty beyond Nifty, the divergence in terms of performance continues to expand because the flows are so strong over there. Yeah, makes sense what you said. So Ishmohit, do you think there is a holy grail in investing? Obviously, there's none. Everybody knows it. But what is something that you think is closest to a holy grail in investing? Like, what is one thing that is like, if you get this right, it will do like you are like for the most part you're done in investing.
I think being open to change and not being like stuck with the philosophy or the thought process of what has worked in the past is the holy grail of investing, right? Because a lot of times प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है, नॉस्टैल्जिया हो जाता है स्टॉक्स के लोगों को.
Yeah, yeah,
16 17 18 में तो यार BFSI चला था, तो हम लोग मतलब यही करेंगे. अब से हो गया 7 8 साल यही करने वाले हैं. अभी इस टाइम पे इंटरनेट बिजनेसेस हैव डन वेल, और डिफेंस कंपनीज आर डूइंग वेल, रेलवे
yeah,
कंपनीज आर
yeah,
डूइंग वेल. आई थिंक मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टॉक्स वेयर इवन बेस्ट ऑफ द इन्वेस्टर्स इन इंडिया हैव मेड मनी, या मल्टी बैगर्स बनाए हैं सबने. ऑलमोस्ट 90-95% ऑफ देम आर cyclicals. I think even a structural story can have like cyclical downturn in volume growth, right?
yeah, yeah,
If you're just open to this fact, I think that that itself does away with a lot of mental biases, right? Because see, 2020 में, if you kept calling chemicals commodities
right.
for 18 months, you missed one
That's,
of
yeah,
its lifetime bull run for that particular sector, right?
yeah,
Between 23 to 24, if you kept calling every company linked to the government as ये तो टेंडर है, इसमें कैश फ्लो कैसे
yeah,
बनेगा, इसका तो कुछ पैसा ही नहीं बन
yeah.
सकता. So you missed one of a lifetime bull run for that
Well
particular,
done. Yeah,
right? अगर सब होटल्स को आज भी मतलब बोलते हैं कि यार ये तो
yeah.
कमोडिटी एसेट हैवी
The
ऐसा है,
cyclical, yeah,
right? So again you would have missed almost a bull run which has come after 18 years in that particular sector, right? So
right.
that ability to change and being willing to accept new facts, I think a lot of people ignore this, but a lot of traditional investors or old investors what I've seen कि एक बार जब पैसा बन जाए तो their investing philosophy completely changes from an aggressive mode they go to a defensive mode,
Right. Right.
right? Which might not be the right strategy for someone who's trying to make good returns today.
Right. Right.
ये चीज समझना पड़ेगा सबको कि आई थिंक इन्वेस्टिंग अकॉर्डिंग टू योर पोर्टफोलियो साइज is different for you at different points of time, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Being unbiased is like the holy grail, right? So I think for this, I think Rakesh Junjunwala was probably the most unbiased investor that I've sort of heard, and it also reflects in the type of businesses he bought, right? So I think he had winners across pharma, healthcare,
Yeah.
IT, steel sector, banking and financial, right? So that type of investing, I think, is very rare for us to find, right? That requires being unbiased with the past. अभी मतलब 4 साल से चल रहा है कि यार large cap banks, large cap banks, large
Yeah.
cap
Yeah.
चल कुछ और रहा है, right?
Right.
अगेन अगर आप 2016, 17, 18 की साइकिल देख के आए हो तो प्रॉब्ली आप लार्ज कैप बैंक से ले रहे होते 2020 में.
Right.
That being I'm also trying very hard because the more basically time you spend in the market, होता है कि you become a better investor but also you become a more biased investor. यार ये तो
Well,
देख,
yeah. Yeah.
right? So this
Makes
happened to
sense.
me recently. There's this infant wear company, like textile company. So in last cycle I lost 75% of my money in 16, 17.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regular business. So a couple of my friends were saying कि इसको देख ले वापस, ये बहुत बड़ा
Yeah.
क्रिप्टो,
Yeah.
इसके पोर्ट पे नंबर एकदम सही आ रहे हैं, एक्सपोर्ट डेटा में नंबर सही आ रहा है, इसको देख ले. एक्चुअली आई वेंट टू वन ऑफ द रिसाइकलिंग प्लांट्स, एक पेट रिसाइकलर कंपनी है वारंगल में.
Yeah.
उनका प्लांट देखने का, उसके साइड पे इनका प्लांट बन रहा था बहुत बड़ा,
Hmm.
right, on a big piece of land, right? So pet recycler has done well, but this company, the stock has become almost a five bagger in like last 14 months. So probably that's a mistake on my point of view. कि I should have been more open to look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, because it is
Right.
a difference of 7 years with the last cycle now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think people who have lost money in a certain stocks, who have bad experience with a certain promoter, they don't want to buy only. Like they just don't look only. Like a lot of professional people missed all the PSU and defense and everything because in the last cycle they burned their money. Like 10 years, nothing happened. So I mean that is true what you're saying, that if you are willing to change your mind, I think that would be very important. Uh so, Ishmohit, now, like, how do you screen for stocks? Like, so, I mean, screening is something that is the most unstructured part of investing. Like, you can have a very wide net, but you will get a lot of stocks, so you won't be able to research them properly. Or if you have a very narrow net, you will miss out on a lot of good opportunities as well. So, obviously, there's like tens of ways to do screening, but what are one or two tools or one or two ways that helps you screen the most ideas for you, that works the best for you?
I think one of the simplest filters which I use, तो बहुत ही सिंपल है यार, कि ये तो कि मतलब जिसी कंपनी में अर्निंग सरप्राइजेस आ रहे हैं, द कंपनीज विच आर बीटिंग एनालिस्ट एक्सपेक्टेशंस. सो वी हैव मतलब वन ऑफ द पर्सन इन आवर टीम जस्ट ट्रैक्स दोज टाइप ऑफ कंपनीज, राइट? कि चाहे वो स्मॉल कैप हो, मिड कैप हो, लार्ज कैप हो. And a lot of times, because these surprises, they tend to last for multiple quarters, right? So if it's the first quarter of such a surprise, then you have to go and study. Like there is no way else कि आपको पढ़ना
Okay.
पड़ेगा. Then another tooling, like screening criteria which I use is relative strength, right? I think
Okay.
relative strength more than a technical is a fundamental criteria. People think कि ऐसा क्यों है? देखो relative strength versus index कौन से स्टॉक में आएगी? जहाँ पे कुछ ना कुछ बढ़िया हो रहा होगा, जहाँ पे ग्रोथ फास्टर आ रही
Right.
है, जहाँ पे आरओसी बढ़ रही होगी, जहाँ पे आरओई बढ़ रही होगी, जहाँ पे कोई मार्जिन इन्फ्लेक्ट हो रहे होंगे. दोज टाइप ऑफ स्टॉक्स विल शो relative strength. And if a group of stocks start showing up in relative strength, right? तो जैसे अभी पावर इक्विपमेंट कंपनीज है, तो वी रिसेंटली फाउंड 3 new स्टॉक आइडियाज फ्रॉम बेसिकली दिस इंटायर ट्रेंड ऑफ पावर इक्विपमेंट बीइंग exported from India. And one of the businesses we saw he had a recent beat versus analyst expectations. And when we went to the con call, we saw that the company is saying that their margins will expand by 4%. They're expecting faster growth going forward. This is just an example.
Yeah.
And they will revise their guidance upwards for the next 2 to 3 years, right? So that is like, मतलब it's a very simple thing कि management commentary strong है, right? अब export, because that's an export business, you can track it from export data every month कि what is happening over there. Then you have looked at the relative strength of the charts कि relative strength wise जैसे अभी markets have been correcting, that business the chart is like just still, मतलब it's relatively outperforming, right? And fourth
Right.
thing, you're also looking at fundamental catalysts where ROC, ROE, margins, everything will expand, right? and it will beat its own guidance. So that is
Right.
one of the screening criteria, looking for positive surprises. चाहे हम fundamental screens use कर रहे हैं जहाँ पे operating margins expand हो रही हो इस quarter में, चाहे like ROC expansion हो रहा हो इस financial year में, चाहे हम technical screens use कर रहे हो, that is relative strength. So all these tools are there freely available. I think I use it on MarketSmith also. I use it on our. We have actually built our own software as well by the name of Stock Scans
Okay. Yeah.
that we used to use on basically for internal purposes, but that is now public. So that we use, and then we use Screener. Like these three tools I use to screen stocks. And also there are a couple of investing groups where I'm part of, where very smart investors are there. तो ऐसा लगता है कि आप में रिटर्न बनाया और फिर then they posting their annual returns. I'm like कि ये कैसा रिटर्न है भाई.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
you at least listen to them what they are talking about or what type of business they are discussing, right? So that also increases your pool of ideas. And also
Right.
another thing is कि जैसे themes आती है, right? So there are themes which are news based, then there are themes which actually show on the ground execution and performance, right? जैसे CDMO का थीम है अब
Right.
ठीक है 2020 2021 में valuations went through the roof and 1 2 years का
Yeah.
correction. But you know
Right.
it's multi-year theme, you can't ignore that theme, right? So वहीं पे जैसे आई थिंक एक दो businesses थे अभी, आई थिंक इन्फ्लेक्शन जस्ट अमी ऑर्गेनिक्स में आया, बट नाउ मल्टीपल्स हैव
Right.
गॉन थ्रू द रूफ, एंड दूसरा इन्फ्लेक्शन न्यूलैंड लैब्स में आया, राइट? लास्ट टू
Yeah.
थ्री, but because you are observing that particular business for 4 years with an open mind, so you could have changed your mind very quickly in that particular
Yeah.
business. तो अब थीम तो आप ट्रैक कर रहे हो, आपको ये भी दिख रहा है कि इसमें प्रोडक्ट मिक्स चेंज होएगा, बट वो एक साल जब खराब होता है तो B2B बिजनेसेस में लोग स्टॉक को पीट देते हैं.
Yeah.
Then
It
you keep.
happened with me. I stopped tracking Newland because of that only. I missed Newland entirely because like 2020, 2021, I was investing in everything, Suvin, Syngin, PI, and everything. But once the cycle downturn started, I stopped tracking only everything, which is why I missed Newland. Because, yeah, so and that is again going back to the original point that you're mentioning, that you have to be open with mind, both on buying and selling.
एंड इतना ओपन होने में ना प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है कि पब्लिकली इफ यू कम एंड टॉक अबाउट अ स्टॉक, मतलब
Yeah.
लिटरली इट इज लाइक समटाइम्स like within 24 hours my opinion of a company changes completely,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? How are you supposed to teach that to someone else? You can't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Education system teaches you कि अगर 100 में से 80 मार्क्स नहीं है तो गलत कर रहे हो, राइट?
Hmm.
उस दिन हो सकता है यार, मतलब बंदा एग्जाम लिखने गया, सर दर्द हो रहा हो तो इस वजह से 70 आ गए, कुड बी एन
Right.
नंबर ऑफ रीजंस, राइट? तो इन्वेस्टिंग में तो यही है, जितना प्राइवेटली और जितना ओपन माइंडेडनेस के साथ करोगे, इवन इफ यू आर रनिंग अ सब्सक्रिप्शन सर्विस, सो यू मस्ट मेक श्योर कि द टाइप ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स यू हैव ओवर देयर, कि दे अंडरस्टैंड दिस, कि देयर विल बी टाइम्स वेयर eggs will be thrown at our face, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There will be
Absolutely.
time. You can't have everything that goes right because facts change. It's not कि आपने आज
Yeah.
चेंज करे, वो चेंज हो गए यार, क्या करें.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Things change, you have to change.
Right. So I think being open minded and being shameless with yourself. यार मेरा तो ओपिनियन अभी से एक दो दिन पहले ये था, भी चेंज ही हो गया, ठीक है यार,
Hmm.
इट्स पार्ट ऑफ लाइफ. अदरवाइज again being relic of the past and changing to the like new information, you have to choose the second always.
Okay. Right. So, Ishmohit, allocation is something that you kind of talk a lot about. So, firstly, on like at a portfolio level, like what number of stocks do you think that works for you? And between individual stocks, like what are some of the key factors that determine, how much you'll allocate relatively to each of the stocks? Say, typically you say 2 4 6 8, right? So, what are the factors that will determine who will get 2 and who will get 8?
I think just as an example ki see, number of stocks for me that is work the best is anywhere between 15 to 25, right? Problem क्या होती है, wider the growth rate or wider the bull market, higher the number of stocks you will have.
Yeah. Yeah.
जितना ग्रोथ नैरो होएगा उतना ही आपके पास कम स्टॉक्स होंगे.
True.
तो ये मतलब सी बुल मार्केट में यू गो फॉर विड्थ, बेयर मार्केट में यू गो फॉर लाइक नैरोनेस.
Depth. Yeah.
So that is something again depends upon how the economic growth underlying pan out हो रही है, but 15 to 25 का लीवे देख के मैं अपने आप को लाइक आई थिंक आज चलता हूँ इस पे. And in terms of allocation, I think if I'm holding 15 stocks, so allocation naturally tends to become 4 6 8%, right? And if
Okay.
you're holding like 25 stocks, तो वहाँ पे फिर 2 4 6 and 8 के बीच में रहता है. And now let's take an example. There is a real estate business which currently is doing I think 1200 crores of pre-sales. but that number will probably start hitting 3,000 to 3,500 crores in next 18 months. Business is net cash, doesn't have debt. Promoter is buying stake, right, inside develop trading where promoter is complete like consistently buying stake in last 2 3 months. And accounting PNL is also turning. So ek to pre-sales is turning, but accounting PNL is also turning because the past projects are being completed and they are getting recognized. And अभी दिख रहा है कि next 3 4 quarters में बहुत बड़ी launches आ रही है इस company में, right? I think they're
Right.
launching inventory worth 5,000 crores in next 3 4 quarters. So
Okay.
3 4 quarters के लिए the growth will inflect big time over there. So now because these triggers are in front, promoter is buying stake, company is net debt free, and all these things मतलब उनका क्योंकि tier 2 tier 3 में projects है तो on the ground you got feedback कि projects are receiving extremely good reviews. So that type of position will be in a 4 6 8 category. It will be a bigger
Yeah.
position.
Okay. But how would you differentiate between 4 and 6? Like, what gets 4, what gets 6, what gets 8?
Liquidity will depend करते sometimes you are buying
Okay.
10 20% you can't do anything, right? So that also I think matters, but in I think 4 or 6 के बीच में रहेगा because 8 I won't take real estate sector to be in 8%
Okay.
sure, because risk factor
Yeah.
बहुत ज़्यादा है, but anywhere between 4 to 6%. If at that point of time I think the growth opportunity is best in this particular business, then it will be a higher sized allocation.
Right. So, like broadly, if I have to put it this way, between 3 factors of upside, conviction, and risk, what would be the weightage of each of these factors when deciding allocation?
So conviction will be the number one.
Number one. Okay.
Second is risk,
Okay.
and
Third is upside.
third one was
Upside. How much is the upside?
yeah. So I think वो conviction साथ ही चलेगा ना. Conviction and upside both come hand in hand, I think. So conviction and upside will be hand in hand. Then risk factor will be there, and third thing will be how good the near to medium term numbers will look like for this business,
Okay.
right?
Got
So
it.
because I think a lot of times because these are cyclical businesses, yeah, मतलब there is no denying the fact that real estate
Yeah.
is a story. No, it's a cyclical story. But if this business
Yeah.
goes through a 4 to 8 quarter patch of reporting that 70, 80% pre-sale number growth, and if the valuations probably are in the bottom quartile of that particular sector, and it belongs to a very good corporate group which has solid financial backing, then you start thinking ki risk reward is extremely positive in this business.
Right. Right. No, I think the point I was trying to make is like, say, if you have a company wherein you think you can make, say, 1x in 2 years, it's a high conviction probability. You have near-term visibility, everything that you feel is doing that, you have great conviction. Whereas there's one stock which is dependent on certain factor. If it plays out, it's like 4x, 5x, but it's like a 50-50 bet, right? So upside is great, but conviction would be like this way,
वो
right?
2 to 4% वाली bucket में जाएगा.
2 to 4%. Okay, got it.
This particular example because the corporate group is really strong and they've created wealth across the market, like across the
Yeah,
industry.
yeah,
वहां पे लगता है कि ठीक है, यहाँ पे तो चलो इनका हिस्ट्री है एटलीस्ट वेल्थ क्रिएशन का, बट कोई एक ही दम नई चीज है जैसे होता ही है, जैसे इस साइकिल
yeah.
में बिजनेसेस में हुआ है, तो वो 2 to 4% बकेट में जाता है, इसलिए इन बुल मार्केट से और पोर्टफोलियो बिकम्स वाइडर.
Right, right, right. Okay. So let's come to selling. So it might at a general level, are you an investor who sells early or who sells late, and why? Like, what is your preference? Do you want to sell early or you want to sell late?
मतलब आई प्रेफर टू सेल समवेयर इन द मिड साइकिल, leaving money on the
No,
table.
but everybody knows that there's no right selling, right? Either you are early or either you're late.
It's it's a what tough question है because I've been thinking in some of the instances I've been late. In some
Yeah,
of
no,
the,
what I'm trying to say is
what will you
obviously,
prefer?
what will you prefer and why?
I think I'll probably prefer to sell maybe a bit early in some
Okay.
of the businesses which give parabolic runs, uh,
Right,
because क्योंकि because problem या फिर क्या चीज है कि the because I've read a lot of literature on value investing, so
right.
intentionally or unintentionally it becomes a part of the DNA you have,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, obviously.
And the moment you see your stock hitting 200, 300 P,
Yeah.
you can't sleep well at night. Like यार ठीक है पैसे बन गए बट प्रोसेस का क्या, ये क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं, राइट? तो वहां पे ये भी हो सकता है, यू यूज अ टेक्निकल स्टॉप लॉस व्हेन द मोमेंट इट हिट्स 21 वीकली ईएमए or 30 weekly EMA, so that becomes your selling pointer if you decided to take off money from the stock, right? So
Okay.
typically if a stock goes to very high valuation, I'm using 21 VMA as my exit pointer. Sometimes I sell on the
Okay.
way up also, because if I think कि इस industry में competition बहुत बढ़ने वाला है, so then I'm selling in tranches on the way up. So half tranche I'll sell on the way up, half tranche I'll sell on technicals. So that also is a pattern of selling which I use. वो half tranche इसलिए छोड़ देता हूँ कि बाद में अफसोस ना हो, like
Right.
regret हो कि यार ये तो और बढ़ गया end में.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? If you sell early, there's always regret because stock is either way is gonna go up. Okay. So how often do you evaluate a certain stock, whether you want to hold it, sell it, or add? Like, is it like with every quarter results or mid-quarter? Also, this is something that you try to do based on, say, if a stock has obviously moved higher, do you keep evaluating, or if it's a quarter-to-quarter decision?
It's a very dynamic decision, right?
Okay.
Now let's take an example ki one company says ki next quarter will be really good, but before the quarter comes, the stock is up 80%. So
Right.
it's already baked into that particular price, right? So
Right.
you can't definitely buy more of that. So you keep holding that. अगर आपको लगता है कि next 2-3 years भी good हो सकता है business के लिए. But then on quarterly results as well, I remember this PPF film business, right? So they started
Yeah.
reporting good results 3-4 quarters back. So we're tracking
Yeah.
story since 2021, right? When stock fell like a brick because there was 2-3 quarters of misses in that business on
Yeah.
margin. But now story again क्या है कि अगर आपने story observe कर लिया हो ना,
Right.
so you also have that intuitive understanding whether now it will accelerate or whether it will go through a period of de-acceleration,
Right.
right? So it happens very rarely, but if you get into the story when it is accelerating, that is the right point when value meets momentum. I think that is rare to find, but if you find it, bet big. I think that is for sure. But I think again, question kya tha? I forgot while going giving the example.
No, like how often do you decide or make a decision around stock whether to hold it, sell it, or add it? Like, for example, the example that you're giving of like PPF in business, obviously the management has said that it's going to be very big, but obviously the stock has ran up, right? So now there's two parts. On one end, you're feeling that it's ran up, but you want to wait for the next quarter input because it might surprise you on the upside as well, right? So that is where the dilemma is, right? So how do you do, like, what do you do in that?
इस specifically stock के example में, because uh, I think you forward numbers where you kept thinking कि this company might do this year, if I'm not mistaken, 360 to 380 crores of PAT. So you had that forward number in mind. So till
Right.
70, 500, 70, 600 crore market cap, I kept buying.
Okay.
Because I thought कि इतना high margin business को इंडिया में 30-35 पी से तो कम मिलता ही नहीं है, right?
Right.
So till that FY25 expected number, I kept buying. Then beyond that market cap, I was like, no, no more buying. Now it's time to chill. So
Right.
that basically, similarly, there is a composites lender business, right?
Hmm.
And that company has also done reasonably well. So actually, there also, I think 50% of today's market cap, that was the first buying decision. And then we bought after it appreciated 80% also. Because 2
Okay.
years forward, it was still at 12p. Because interest cost घटने पे PAT expansion आ रहा था. And margins are also expanding. So that
Right.
decisions, again, you will be partly right over there, but averaging up on the basis of cheaper valuation a year or two forward, and on the basis of like certainty of growth, that has worked out very well for me in a lot of businesses. So that
Okay.
thing I keep doing. तो वो calculator चलते रहते हैं दिमाग में कि अच्छा मतलब again I won't do an Excel sheet or something.
Yeah.
I just think यार मतलब you have worked as an analyst, but have you ever seen an analyst assuming cash flow degrowth in a year जब भी DCF बनाते हैं?
No.
But in real business, because you also run
Yeah.
a business, you see
Yeah.
कि there is monthly degrowth or growth,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right? तो वो certainty को आप capture ही नहीं कर सकते DCF में. So you just need to have a ballpark number in your head कि next 1-2 years में इसका क्या multiples है forward पे, and then you compare with the peers कि इंडिया में कैप गुड कंपनीज को क्या मिल रहा है, दिस टाइप ऑफ बिजनेस बॉल पार्क आइडिया में कि क्या मिलना चाहिए। तो फिर दैट इज वन ऑफ द वेज वी एवरेज अपॉन स्टॉक्स एंड ऑल्सो टेक्निकली एज वेल, बिकॉज ही स्ट्रॉन्ग स्टॉक्स विल कीप फॉर्मिंग बेसिस एंड हैविंग बेसिकली ब्रेकआउट्स। तो स्ट्रॉन्ग स्टॉक्स में ट्रेंड एकदम ब्रेक डाउन नहीं हो जाएगा, राइट? ब्रेक डाउन तभी होएगा आई थिंक व्हेन देयर इज अ फोर्थ सेलर, so that also you have to get a lot of clarity on. But if the stock is in a sideways trend after a solid up move and it is in a sideways trend for 3-4 months, a base is being formed या tightness हो रही है chart में, and even the valuation start looking reasonable on a 1 or 2 year forward level, that is also a very good point to average like average upon that particular business.
One question over here, Ishmohit. So say you have a stock that you believe everything's gotten good. Then there's one bad quarter. Okay. Now, either you can be someone who can say give a benefit of doubt that this is a one-off and things might recover in another quarter. Right? In which case, obviously, you want to hold it. But generally, if you think that next 3-4 quarters are bad, not bad, like the growth would be there, it would be like a flattish kind of thing. Do you hold that stock? Because on the one side, people keep saying that the longer you hold, the longer your horizon is, that is where you make the biggest money, which is great in saying, but it's obviously the most difficult part to do. Because obviously when, like, for example, the microfinance company that you're talking about, you believed in the long term, which is why you held it, right? But obviously next 3-4 quarters, when they turn bad, things can go, spiraling down, right? Which becomes very difficult. So like over the years of my experience, now I've started realizing that I don't want to give 4 quarters personally. That it doesn't work. Like even if you don't lose money, but the opportunity cost, especially in this market, is so huge that it makes you regret in the later stages, right? So for you, do you think you will give couple of quarters, hold on to it, or you will try to just rotate out of it if you think next 3-4 quarters are not gonna be great?
A degree of cyclicality बहुत ज़्यादा है तो I'll be a seller. That rule I've made for myself.
Yeah, that is clear. But like say it's a consumer business steady state, there would be some growth, but there would be like, for example, some companies growing at 20-30%, the growth will come down to say 10-15% maybe for a couple of quarters.
So again, अगर उधर starting multiple मेरा बहुत ज़्यादा है तो I'll be a
Right.
seller. मतलब
You'll
यहाँ
be
तो मैं
selling.
टेक्निकल्स पे लगा दूंगी 21 वीए में टूट रहा है, 30 वीए में टूट रहा है, I'll sell. But now
Right.
suppose if there's a jewelry business and we had a custom duty cut, right?
Right.
Due to which 2 quarters का पैट ग्रोथ नहीं दिखेगा,
Yeah.
but volume growth अच्छा आ रहा है, 20-25% आ रहा है.
Right.
That type of business I won't sell because I know that's a one-off in the earnings growth
Yeah.
of the business. और actually में अगले साल अच्छा ही हो जाएगा ना, क्योंकि इस साल का बेस नीचे हो.
Right. Right. Right.
So that type of thing I wouldn't sell, but if I think it's a biggest margin of safety, as you were saying, as your old firm says, biggest margin of safety in Indian market lies in growth.
Growth. Yeah.
A value stock might even crash further 30-40% if
Yeah.
there, right? So getting your growth certainty right becomes very important. And also I think the एक बहुत बड़ा realization भी है कि जो आपके मार्केट स्ट्रक्चर होता है ना, जब बुल मार्केट होएगा, बेयर मार्केट होएगा, तो बुल मार्केट में जनरली दिखेगा कि यार क्या हिट रेट हो गया आपका, मतलब 80-90
Right.
स्टॉक्स ऊपर जा रहे हैं, आप जो भी खरीद रहे हो. फिर बेयर
Right.
मार्केट्स में रियलाइजेशन आता है, नो नो नो, दिस इज वी
Yeah.
आर रिवर्जन टू मीन और हैवी, राइट?
Yeah. Right.
अक्रॉस साइकिल्स अगर 60-65% एक हिट रेट आ जाए, दैट्स अ वेरी गुड नंबर टू हैव, बिकॉज you admit ki you can't be perfect in this sport, right? And whenever you're
Right.
going wrong, taking your losses early, right, or taking off the money, like taking money off the table becomes very important. And also being adept enough कि जहां से अभी आपने पैसा हटाया है, क्या पता वही स्टोरी एक साल बाद वापस अच्छी हो जाए, to basically
Right.
re-enter that particular business. So again, it's
Right.
about agility, quickness, and being unbiased. That's the biggest thing, I think.
Right. Right. Another thing, Ishmohit, so now I think you do a lot of things. Like you have a YouTube channel, you run research firm, AIFs and everything. So is there a particular routine on a daily or weekly basis that you follow to do each aspect of your investing and the other activities that you do?
I think all of those things are attached at the hip. For
Okay.
example, I did a webinar on metals and mining.
Right.
So people learned, right? So our tribe members, they learned about metals and mining from scratch. They learned about at least 50 businesses. I got to learn कि which business is the basically risk reward किसमें best लग रहा है, कौन
Right.
से सेक्टर में क्या चलता है. अगर आयरन और माइनिंग हो रही है तो which company has a long dated lease, for example, because that becomes a competitive advantage. कोई इंडिया के अंदर स्टेनलेस स्टील मैन्युफैक्चरर कितने which are integrated? The answer is one, right? Where EBITDA per ton is very very consistent. And then there was an anti-dumping duty imposed on stainless steel pipe import in India for next 5 years. Some of the businesses have scaled up 6-7 times during that phase. So I think all these things at the end, whatever I'm doing, एक तो रीजन ये है कि जब आप किसी को पढ़ाने वाले होते हो ना, तो आपको बहुत
Right.
अच्छे से चीज समझ आनी चाहिए,
Yeah.
वरना आप किसी को नहीं
Absolutely.
बता सकते, राइट?
Right.
Sometimes we don't have webinars for 3-4 weeks because myself I'm learning. I don't know how this thing goes, right? So that becomes a very important topic because learning and teaching leads to broadening of your own sort of thought process.
Yeah.
तो एक तो टीचिंग, आई जस्ट लव टीचिंग, लाइक टीचिंग इज समथिंग विच आई कैन डू. मतलब अभी किसी अगर इफ आई एम वर्किंग एट अ यूनिवर्सिटी, इफ आई वांट टू टीच इन्वेस्टिंग, तो एक दो बारी तो इन्वेस्टिंग लिटरेचर पढ़ा दूंगा. फिर मेरी क्लासेस अगर कैसे होंगी कि आई गो थ्रू आउट ईच एंड एवरी इंडस्ट्री फॉर रेस्ट ऑफ द ईयर. Because that
Okay.
is what investing is. It's not like कि बेंजामिन ग्रेम ने क्या बोला, फिल फिशर ने क्या
Yeah.
बोला, वो सब तो हो गया यार, उन्होंने अपने टाइम पे बोला था, राइट? तो आज उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है कि इंडिया की इंडस्ट्री में क्या चल रहा है. सो आई थिंक टीचिंग इज अ नेचुरल एडवांटेज फॉर अ लॉट ऑफ अदर थिंग्स. सो आई थिंक जनरली जो टाइम पीरियड डिवाइड होता है डे में, इट्स आई वेक अप अ बिट लेट. आई थिंक आई वेक अप अराउंड 10 a.m., राइट?
Oh
एंड
wow, you missed the opening.
मतलब आई डोंट डू स्क्रीन वॉचिंग दैट मच, राइट?
Okay.
तो
Good habit. Good habit.
because I've seen it becomes a very unproductive habit.
Yeah. So how did you stop it? Like how do you keep yourself from not doing it?
मतलब आई हैव नॉट बीन अ बिग फैन ऑफ इट एनी, लेकिन एनीवेज कि मतलब मेरे को लगता है 15 मिनट की मार्केट देखने से मेरे किस स्टॉक प्राइस को क्या हो जाएगा. अगर मेरा कोई बिजनेस गिरने ही वाला है, किसी का स्टॉक प्राइस गिरी
Right.
तो वैसे ही पता लग जाएगा यार,
Right.
राइट?
Right.
So that I think once or twice a day I have a look at my trading view watch list जिसके ना जो भी businesses होते हैं, तो I've created 4 watch lists जिसके अंदर सारे
Right.
businesses होते हैं. So that just keeps you a bit sane. Otherwise problem क्या
Yeah.
होती है, the we don't admit it, but a lot of time intraday stock price movement ends up
Yeah. Yeah. Impacts.
driving
Yeah.
your long term decision.
Absolutely.
Right. So screen watching is like twice a day trading view watch list or on stock scans watch list. That is one thing that I do. Then 10 a.m. उठने के बाद I think for first 1 hour of the day I'm reading Kotak Daily. I'm
Okay.
reading Antique Daily. तो जो आपकी जो daily reports आती है
Right.
इंडस्ट्री में कोई कॉन्फ्रेंस होगी, देन अभी जैसे कल पावर सेक्टर की रिपोर्ट आई थी जेपी मॉर्गन की ऑन ऑन यूएस, तो वो पूरा रिपोर्ट पढ़ा सुबह बैठ के. आज सुबह बैठ के भी एक रिपोर्ट पढ़ा था. आज आई थिंक देयर वाज वन ऑफ द प्लेटफॉर्म बिजनेसेस ऑन विच वन ऑफ द ब्रोकरेजेस हैव इनिशिएटेड. तो सुबह उठते ही वो रिपोर्ट पढ़ा कि अच्छा इस बिजनेस में क्या चल रहा है, राइट? तो दैट इज फर्स्ट 1 hour ऑफ द डे. देन आई थिंक यूजली देयर इज अ सेक्टर, और जैसे अभी प्रिसिजन इंजीनियरिंग पे रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ,
Okay.
तो अभी लास्ट 2-3 आवर से क्या कर रहा था कि प्रिसीजन इंजीनियरिंग में जितनी भी कंपनीज है इंडिया में, आई थिंक देर आर 18 और 19 कंपनीज, आई एम गोइंग थ्रू ईच एंड एवरी कॉन कॉल. तो
Okay.
इट्स अगेन बिकॉज आई हैव टू मेक अ वीडियो ऑन प्रिसीजन इंजीनियरिंग, but I'm going through each and every company. So I myself am filtering some of the best stocks over there. Yeah,
Right.
even the video will be from a neutral point of view because video doesn't give
Right.
any recommendation. But जब आप पढ़ रहे हो तो आपको एक सेंस आ जाता है कि यार इस
Yeah.
स्टॉक
Yeah.
है
Obviously.
कि दिस वन माइट डू मच बेटर,
Yeah.
सो आई शुड पर्सनली रीड दिस.
Right.
So that gives an added advantage, right? So and then I'm just shooting this podcast with you. Post this, I'll basically go to the gym. So gym is right next to my house. It is
Mm.
like just 3-4 houses like away. So one thing which I'm done very consciously कि I don't like to travel too much
Okay.
because we waste a lot of time in traveling. Earlier, my office was in Gurgaon, Cyber City. So I used to spend almost 2.5 hours traveling back and forth. So that completely disrupts your day, right? So
Okay.
my office is right beneath the room in which I sleep in. It's above.
Okay.
तो मतलब एक्चुअली मैं सीढ़ियाँ निकल के आती हैं यहाँ से. तो if I want to get to office, 10 seconds I'm in office.
Right.
If I want to go to the gym, within 30 seconds I'm at the gym.
Okay.
So all of my day is spent around this environment because I don't want to travel यार 1-2 घंटे. और मैं ट्राई भी करता हूँ जो भी जितनी भी मैनेजमेंट मीट्स है, इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रैवलिंग टू ऑफ आउटस्कर्ट लोकेशंस एंड समटाइम्स, तो एक एनालिस्ट को प्लांट विजिट पे भेज दिया, देन मैनेजमेंट मीट जूम के साथ कर ली. बिकॉज फिजिकली यू कांट ट्रैवल टू मेनी प्लांट्स, राइट? वंस यू हैव डन इट 40-50 प्लांट्स देख लिए, तो यू गेट अ ब्रॉड सेंस कि अच्छा इसका मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट में क्या चलता है क्या नहीं चलता. दैट इज वेयर योर टीम ऑल्सो हेल्प्स यू.
Right.
This is how usually the routine is. I think then every week, twice a week, we have a team meeting with all the SOIC like partners. So have a team meeting होता है कि ये आपने करना है, ये ऐसा ऐसा करना है. And I am not the one who takes follow-ups from people. Like people have to take follow-ups. So ये वाला काम हो गया, आप बताओ क्या करना चाहिए. Then I just
Right.
give a suggestion कि इसमें हम ऐसा कर सकते हैं. अगर blog किसी ने लिखा packaging industry में, तो we could have added this. So this type of insights I'm just helping people with, but I can't take follow-ups from people. क्योंकि खुद की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इतनी बड़ी लगती है कि यू कांट डू इट. सो दैट इज व्हाई यू हैव टू हैव पीपल हु आर वर्किंग विद यू देमसेल्व्स आर वेरी रिस्पॉन्सिबल. तो उससे थोड़ा ना
Right.
काम बहुत आसान हो जाता है. But generally,
Cool.
फिर जिम से वापस आके then again it's reading on Financial Times. Then also like Financial Times, Ken, and there is also one more publication which I read, FT, which I read almost all articles. Ken, sometimes morning context, some of the articles are good, but some of the articles are just like not so good. And so good ones I try to read. And then again, abhi precision engineering video pe I'll work. So till
Right.
11:30 I'll work. Then for 1 hour I'll play a video game with a group of friends, right? So that is also something which I do,
Okay.
right? So then from
Yeah.
1 a.m. till 2:30 a.m. again I'll be reading in last 30 minutes of the day. Just like whatever I've learned throughout the day, I'll just write it down and sleep around 2:30 or 3 a.m. types. That's the routine. And 10 a.m. I'm again up.
Got it. Got it. Okay. That's interesting. Uh, okay, Ishmohit. So, uh, one biggest winner in your investing journey doesn't have to be the biggest absolute winner, but wherein things played out the way you expected them to, and something that is close to heart. Like, okay, that changed something, like something that made you realize, say, for example, that this is how it has to be done. That okay, inflection investing, and this stock made me realize that this is the power of investing, something like that. At the same time, one biggest loser that made you realize some very big important lesson that you have now implemented. You don't necessarily have to name them, but just a broad process of how you found them, how you discovered them, how you held them, how you sold them, and what you learned out of them.
I think listed space में probably the biggest quantum of money. See, biggest winner का होता है कि आपका 600-700% रिटर्न बन गया. फिर एक होता है
Right.
बिगेस्ट क्वांटम ऑफ मनी कि आपका वो स्टॉक में हुआ तो 300-350% ही, बट आपने पैसा बहुत डाल रखा था उसमें.
Yeah, yeah.
So quantum of money, there is one of the CDMO businesses in which I made, and that is why it was a realization कि I thought कि the story will play out in 1 year, but it took 3 years to play out. So initially I exited, but best
Mm.
चीज उसमें क्या हुई मेरे को उससे learning क्या मिली कि I was very open to it. I used to still attend every con even after exiting.
Right.
I never shied away from the business because I thought कि हमें एक thesis तो है, और जब growth आने लगी तो I was early to that. So that was the I think that was quantum of money. I think that is where that did really well. Simple तो क्या था कि product mix change हुआ, ROC 10% का 35% हो गया, cash flows went through the like I think 30-40 crore का cash flow, 260-270 crores का cash flow हो गया. तो एकदम inflection आया, but I couldn't time that inflection, but I timed the quarter when the growth started, right? So two
Okay.
quarters के लिए the guy kept saying कि this is not a one-off, this is a sustainable trend. And then I read their management meet note where they said कि post FY26 till FY30 we have a sight of molecules which will keep getting launched. Until FY30 we expect this growth to persist. अब FY30 तक growth आए ना आए, अपने तो 2 quarter में growth दिख गई, and then we invest.
Right.
So that was one of the biggest quantum in terms of money. It was a very big winner. Second, I think there was this unlisted business which I invested in. I think it's going to
Okay.
IPO in a month or two. So that is where I think we went to meet the promoter. So that opportunity I got via a friend in the steel tube industry, right? So
Okay.
because he was a very good friend, so he like he also wanted to invest in that business. So he took all of us investors over there. So I saw
Mm.
the business, I saw the asset. It was a completely integrated asset for making steel tubes, from iron ore till steel tubes, right? And
Okay.
replication cost of that asset would be close to 800 to 1000 crores. And entire market cap in unlisted was 700 crores. Post money we invested in 860 crores. This was I think 18 months or some time back, 18 months or 20
Okay.
months back. Business is at a run rate to do 300 crores EBITDA today. I still
Wow.
believe कि why it was at that cheap valuation. Like sometimes I'm like कि इसमें ऐसा क्या था? But we did our due diligence very carefully. We hired a FDD LDD team. They couldn't find anything on the promoters. There was some structuring issue which they solved. Now that company is IPOing at 3600 crore type probably a 3,600 crore or 4,000 crore market cap, which is what
Oh, wow.
listed peers trade at, right? At least 10 to 15 times EBITDA. So that was also I think that is a huge winner basically. But again, that was an opportunity found only because of network.
Yeah.
That I couldn't have screened or stuff. But screening में तो they आपका pharma का idea था. In chemicals में 2020 to 21 में a lot of businesses did well. And like another interesting one was in terms of quantum of money made. There was a cable and wire company where there was a tax evasion issue. And
Recent. Yeah.
I think just common sense, a cable खरीदने जाओ यार कभी बाजार में तो
Yeah.
आप भी ले रहे होगे, right? So, and I think the way a lot of tax authorities in India work, every company has some contingent liability. I have not picked an
Obviously.
iPhone and not found in contingent liability. So that business fell to 24 or 23 times earnings, right, on a forward basis. And I was like, this is the cheapest stock, the best company in this sector, highest ROC, highest cash flow generating company. So that was sort of a no-brainer at that point of time. I think that's probably one of the only times in my life I've taken a leveraged bet.
Oh, wow.
Right, right. Otherwise, I
But,
don't suggest it to do. It's a very risky thing. Right.
right. On the losing side, like
और लूजिंग
what?
साइड लूजर है यार तो लूजर तो एक सबसे बड़ा तो इन्फेंट वेयर मैन्युफैक्चरर था 2016-17 में आई लॉस्ट 75% ऑफ माय कैपिटल राइट अभी रिसेंटली अ माइक्रो फाइनेंस बिजनेस ऑन विच आई थिंक आई वाज अप ऑलमोस्ट 2.53 टाइम्स बट देखा जाए तो probably now it's getting like I think I'm still up but from the peak it's down 60%, right?
Right.
So I still consider it as a loser because I left a lot of money on the table, which I could have taken earlier, but now I'll be just waiting for the next cycle to come. Matlab, I don't think it makes any sense to sell because the business is still doing well versus the peers in that particular sector. That was
Right.
one. Another big loser. Another losers were there was another business in animal pharma where initially I invested and it did extremely well, and I think multiple went to 110 times. So I myself got caught up in the business, right? And then when I sold it at a 5-10% loss. So within three,
Right.
4 months, it was 110% up. And within 3-4 months, I sold at a 5-10% loss. And the stock actually fell halved even from there, from my selling price. Right.
I
So
think after that you stopped. Like after that you became very conscious of 100x multiple, right?
I think I've been very conscious of 100x multiple anyways, right? But प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है कि अगर इतना मतलब 100 पी के स्टॉक की लगती है जब स्टोरी बेस्ट हो
Right.
और उसकी अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ भी बेस्ट हो. अब अगर सब कुछ ही बेस्ट है, इफ यू आर एट द एक्सट्रीम
Yeah.
एंड ऑफ द बेल कर्व, व्हाट हैपेंस अगर कुछ खराब हो गया
Yeah. Yeah.
तो आपका मल्टीपल में भी जाएगा, अर्निंग्स में भी जाएगा, पी
Right.
रेशियो
Yeah.
में भी जाएगा, राइट, मार्जिन में भी जाएगा. एवरीवेयर यू हैव ओनली टू लूज. Right, so this
Right.
also leads to mistakes. So another good example, because see, investing is a profession of mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So this अभी एक वो business है आपका कौन सा है, that is into AC contract manufacturing, which has been gaining market share from Amber Enterprises, right? So
Hmm.
that was one of the businesses in our RA desk, which we recommended, I think, at a market cap of 6,200 crores type. But we took off the money at 16,000 crores because P multiple went to 100 times. So you're like, yes, 16,500 crore पे मतलब within 3-4 months the stock has given such a huge run up, and how can we overstay the welcome here? From
Right.
that point of time, in less than 30 days, market cap went to 28,000 crores. It went
That's
from
just
95p to
right.
155.
Yeah. That.
Promoter is saying that the new line of business has lower margins. Right? Growth will be 35-40%. Growth is not inflecting, growth rate is the same, but now it is at 155p. So यहाँ पे probably I
Yeah.
should have used technicals more to sort of cut it, but I'm still reasonably okay with the outcome. मतलब बहुत greed नहीं है कि यार मेरे को 200 पे तक राइड करना है किसी चीज को.
Right. So, Ishmohit, one of the last few questions. So, SOIC have sort of evolved from a YouTube channel to education course to research. Now you are part of an AIF as well. You're writing a book. I think very recently you announced that you're looking to start international stock research as well. So, like, what's next? What is something that you're excited about, and how do you see SOIC evolve in, let's say, next couple of years?
I think next 3-4 years के लिए education, which is the first love,
Yeah.
fund, and research. Just three verticals. And research, maybe we are expanding the team. So,
No,
so
you said education, research, and what's the third
uh,
one?
education, fund, and research.
Fund and research. Okay.
So just three things over next 3 to 4 years, because we have our hands full with these three things. And in the research and the fund one, so first coming to research, अब जैसे international आ रहे desk है. So one of the team members, he's been tracking international stocks for last 4 years now almost, right?
Okay.
And we've been carefully looking at what type of businesses he's reading, what type of businesses he's screening and throwing our way. मतलब उस business में क्या चल रहा है. जैसे like recently, like one of the businesses he like mentioned is a world market leader in memory chips, and it's at 6p. Dividend yield is almost 6.5 7%. राइट. सो दैट टाइप ऑफ बिजनेसेस, आई थिंक हम लोग इंटरनेशनल आर में ऐसा सोच रहे हैं. तो रिसर्च में वी हैव अ गुड केपेबल टीम नाउ, आई थिंक. तो दैट इज वेयर आई थिंक टीम हेल्प्स अ लॉट. फंड के अंदर ऑल्सो वी हैव अ वेरी गुड टीम. So fund में my co-partner is the CI of the fund, is one of the guys. He used to work at a hedge fund in like Singapore, and I've been collaborating on ideas with him for almost last 4 5 years now. It is, मतलब we, there's not a day which goes by when we don't talk on the phone. मतलब we are there on the phone for at least 30 40 minutes कि आज ये वाला आइडिया देखा, ये वाला आइडिया देखा, वैसा आइडिया सीखा मैंने. तो राइट, so that also becomes a very good learning experience also, because he has been investing across the world. He used to work at Sequoia Capital also, and he also used to like manage an India focused hedge fund, which has done very well. And now he has come in this fund structure with us. And education may, I have like another three four team members who work with me, and they're also really capable. So I think all student questions, like we get almost 25 questions a day. This has been happening for last 4 years. So teammates
Right.
and I answer that. Right. So
Makes sense.
initially
Makes
only I
sense.
used to answer, but now the team has become so capable कि टीम वाले कहते हैं हम आंसर कर देते हैं, आप कितना कुछ करोगे, हम लोग ही आंसर कर देते हैं. So that type of basically micro structures within the organizations have been created.
Right. When is the book coming out?
Uh, try effort है March 2025 में, and
March 25.
right, that is the effort. Let's see.
Got it. Got it. So, in the end, Ishmohit, with each of this podcast, what I want is for our viewers to have two key takeaways. First is one hack or learning that sort of improved your investment outcome substantially that you think can help investors as well, right? And second is one business or one industry that you're currently looking at that looks good to you. Don't necessarily have to name them, but just directional insights would help.
Right. So I think first, I think on one thing which a lot of investors who are watching this can take away is that कि whenever you're reading a business, पहली चीज तो सर्कल ऑफ कॉम्पिटेंस का कॉन्सेप्ट बाहर निकाल दो. There is no such thing which is beyond your competence. I think the thing is कि if you work hard enough, you can understand anything. Right? So break
Right.
down things into simple stuff. Like generally how I do it is that anything that I'm studying or reading, I just break it down into 4 parts, 5 parts actually. Theme, what is the theme that I'm looking at, कि कौन सा industry देख रहा हूँ, whether it's growing fast or not. Second, I'll be looking at is the value, whether there is value in the industry. If I'm looking at an industry at a starting multiple of 300 या 400, तो मेले हो सकता है रिस्की हो, बट हाँ अगर उसमें 2 3 years down the line उसमें भी वैल्यू हो सकता है, तो आई स्टिल लुक एट इट. Third is basically growth triggers in that business. Are there growth triggers in that particular business? Whether it doesn't matter कि order book based है, doesn't matter कि quick commerce based है, doesn't matter कि IT service based है या कोई IT product based है, doesn't matter कि penetration based है, but I need to understand what is that growth trigger. And finally, I've started spending a lot of time कि what is the promoter like, what is the promoter background, because a lot of times promoters they don't have hunger for growth. मतलब कई promoters होता है कि जैसे गाड़ी चल रही है चलने दो, like so there's this
Mm.
artificial leather company like 2015 से
Yeah.
करके बैठे हुए हैं. अभी 2024 आ गया यार. Every quarter is a growth quarter for them, and every quarter they report a 3 4% degrowth या 3 4% growth. राइट. सो दैट इज अगेन लुकिंग एट द प्रमोटर हिस्ट्री, यू नो कि यार यहाँ पे कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ हो रही है, मेरे को नहीं पता क्या गड़बड़ है, बट कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ है, तो मैं नहीं कर रहा इसको. राइट. तो दैट बिकम्स अ पार्ट ऑफ द मैनेजमेंट एनालिसिस कि वेदर दे आर डूइंग व्हाट दे आर सेइंग. एंड फाइनली द रिस्क फैक्टर कि इस बिजनेस में क्या रिस्क हो सकते हैं. जैसे रिसेंटली सर्टिफिकेशन कंपनी लिस्टेड, राइट. So
Right.
there, a long-term risk could be, what if LGD becomes as cheap as artificial jewelry and no certification is required? Will this business exist after 5 years? So there's a terminal value risk question over there, not terminal value risk as
Right.
we say, but a question does come to mind, right? So these
Right.
are five things in which I simply break down any business or any industry I want to learn, right?
Got it.
Second question was,
Got it.
Ankush, on
One good business or sector that is looking interesting to you for now,
I think the sector that is looking interesting.
or something where people should be cautious. Even that would work.
Cautious, I think यहाँ से जो EMS businesses हैं,
Hmm.
you should be a bit cautious on them at least for the next basically 1 year at least in my view, because
Okay.
they've become growth traps. ग्रोथ ट्रैप क्या होता है कि अगर ग्रोथ नहीं आई तो स्टॉक पिटेगा, राइट?
Right.
बट इज अ वैल्यू ट्रैप कि यार इसमें तो कभी ग्रोथ आती नहीं। ग्रोथ ट्रैप क्या होता है एक्चुअली में, अगर ग्रोथ नहीं आई तो मतलब अगर 100%
Hmm.
की ग्रोथ 60% आई तो इवन
Hmm.
देन यू नो कि इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू डू वेल। So EMS is a sector I'll be rather careful of. The theme which I'll be bullish on is probably a healthcare theme. I still find a lot of value in a lot of businesses. That is the theme I'll
Okay.
be bullish on today.
Okay. Bottoms up on healthcare stocks.
Right? Whether it's a hospital, whether it's a CDMO business, whether it's a diversified pharmaceutical company, so still
Right.
there are a couple of opportunities where earnings are going to inflect in next 1 or 2 quarters.
Got it. Got it. Got it. That was very insightful conversation, Ishmohit. Thanks again for doing this. I think there were a lot of key learnings for everyone on this podcast. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting me.